Alright, this is the video for the real cappers. This is where I'm going to really break down the fight between Wanderlei Silva and Rich Franklin. But first things first, I know that my boy Gabe is hurting, and I haven't forgot about you. So get well, Gabe, and I'm going to pour some liquor out for you because you're my boy, and I feel for you. So I like to see brighter days with you. Getting back to the fight, Wanderlei Silva versus Rich Franklin. This is a rematch of their fight in Cologne, Germany at UFC 99. I'll quickly discuss where they were then and where they are now and why there are significant differences between the two fights, and really to analyze that first fight, the second fight, and a job as a capper really is to transpose the fighter now against his opponent. And we have a benefit of actually having the two fighting so we can really look at the two, but not to get caught up in analyzing strictly who won the first fight and who will be able to win this fight based on that. Because that's completely bogus, and that's why there are a lot of people that are naive, dumping on Franklin as an instinct of seeing that, oh, Rich is plus money and he won the first fight, so not much has changed, I'm going to dump my money on Franklin. No, don't do that. I'm going to tell you why. UFC 99. This was the first fight that Silva had to cut down from, we'll say, middleweight in Pride of 203 and 205 light heavyweight in the UFC down to 185. So this was his transition, and he fought this at Franklin weight of 195 in Cologne, Germany. And you could really see that the Wanderlei afterwards, Wanderlei 2.0 versus, I'll call him Wanderlei 1.5, is a very different fighter. There's the weight cut element and the fact that he had never cut weight before, the fact that he had to lose 12 pounds 24 hours before the weigh-ins, and Franklin actually was going up in weight by 10 pounds, leaving middleweight, and Franklin having a great cut, and Joe mentioned him being in a good mood, which is extremely rare for Franklin, who's a very big middleweight and has a tough time cutting, and now having the benefit of actually moving up and having that cushion, which is a complete opposite of the UFC 147 fight, where Wanderlei has been at middleweight. He now is being given a 5-pound cushion, even though he's been training up until the past month for Vitor at middleweight with improved conditioning, with improved cardio, with improved diet, and now has a little bit of wiggle room to not kill himself for that cut to 185, although he has looked good even cutting to that now, versus Franklin, who's, I guess you can call him a 205. I mean, the last time the guys fought was a year and a half ago. The guy's got a lot of ring rust, so I guess the last time he fought was 205, and he's got to get down to not even Franklin weight, even below Franklin weight, to $190. So 3/4 of the way back down to middleweight, and that's not going to be fun for Franklin. Franklin's also the older fighter at 37. He also had a recent shoulder or labrum surgery, and so, you know what? There are a lot of question marks around Wanderlei. There are even more question marks around Rich Franklin. Getting back to that UFC 99 fight, it was a tough cut for Wanderlei. It was not for Franklin, and the odds were stacked in Rich's favor for that fight. Having said that, if you really watch the fight itself, not from a unified MMA ruling point of view, although we can score it like that as well, from an overall fight perspective, every round was very close in that fight, and Rich won the last minute or less of at least rounds 1 and 3, based on a failed guillotine attempt by Wanderlei in round 1, which forced him on the bottom, and in round 3 where he was taken down and then was controlled by the clinch, and he was throwing elbows from behind him to Rich as Rich was trying to pound on him. And Rich took those 2 rounds, I think, on all 3 judges' scorecards. Bruce Buffer never announced the scores, but I looked them up afterwards. I think one judge gave a 30-27 for Rich, 2 29-28. So I believe probably Wanderlei got that second round. I believe both guys actually were stung in that round, and really Wanderlei put the pressure on at the end of that round, and ultimately Wanderlei probably won that second round on those 2 judges' scorecards. But, I mean, an argument can be made that maybe Wanderlei could have won that fight. I don't give a shit. That's not my job. My job is not to analyze UFC 99 and score that. It's to transpose the fighters now in how they will fight one another in a 5-round fight too, in Brazil. So these are a lot of factors that people are not regarding if they're betting lines as they are at Rich at a 1.5 or 2-to-1 favorite, which is ludicrous in my mind. So, with regards to Silva, Silva matches up quite nicely to Rich Franklin. Silva's main weakness, in my humble opinion, is at least perceived to be his chin, which I would heavily disagree with, and I would say that it's his striking defense. So, just follow me here for 1, 2, 3, 4. Krokop head kick, Hendo H bomb, Rampage hook, Lieben uppercut. Now say that back with me. I don't hear you. Krokop head kick, Rampage hook, Hendo H bomb, Lieben uppercut. Okay. There are very few, if any, fighters that could survive those 4 weapons. And yet, Wanderlei Silva is looked at as a guy who has a shot chin. He's looked at as a guy who is basically a Chuck Liddell type of fighter that now gets dropped by punches that would never have dropped him before and easily KO'd. And that's bullshit, my friends. His striking defense has always been porous, and the guy, I mean, was Wanderlei's chin shot in 97 when Belfort went apeshit in UFC Brazil? No, fuck no. He's got vulnerable striking defense. And against guys that can pound you the fuck out, I don't like playing Wanderlei, and I've done very well in his past 4 fights, betting and winning all those fights, betting for Wanderlei or fading him in the Lieben fight, because Lieben's a terrible stylistic matchup, and Wanderlei is just going to go out and basically sling punches. But against a guy like Franklin, who doesn't have the one-punch knockout power to really not only just drop, but be able to pound out Wanderlei, I'm not really that concerned, and I feel a lot of people are overplaying this. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very... the percentages are not reflective of how likely that of an outcome that is, and really, I don't know, are people coming up with a implied probability of 65 or 70% for Rich Franklin to win this fight? He's going to win this by stoppage, he's going to win this by decision. Now, where the fuck are the percentages coming from? Think about it. This is a 5-round fight in Brazil, okay? The stats are something like 80 to 90% of Brazilians versus non-Brazilians have gone the way of the Brazilians. Even close fights, fights like Thiago Tavares versus Sam Stout, or really, really biased fights like Rumble versus Vitor, with all of the stand-ups literally 10-15 seconds after taken down thanks to Dan Murgliata. All these factors heavily shift the odds in favor of the Brazilian, especially a guy like Wanderlei, who's headlining the card with a rambunctious crowd that is going to be going ape shit every time he throws wild hooks, and he's going to sway the judges if it does go to scorecards. And I really think that it's not out of the realm of possibility. Obviously, most people strongly feel that this fight is going to be stopped within 5 rounds, and yeah, it probably will be, but where is the 65-70% in favor of Rich coming from? What percentage is going to be a Rich decision? Because Rich very unlikely will win that decision. I will eat this mask if Rich tools Wanderlei on the feet for 5 rounds and wins a 50-45 decision. It's not going to happen. Least of the places would be Brazil. So don't think that Rich Franklin's going to win a decision in this fight, and that really leaves it up to, can Rich Franklin finish Wanderlei Silva? I would argue, fuck no. So maybe there's a 1 in 5 shot, 1 in 4 shot that Franklin has enough KO power to finish Wanderlei. But if you really look at the fights that Wanderlei's fought in since that fight, he's fought guys that generally do get TKOs by pouring on damage, much like Rich Franklin. He fought Bisping at UFC 110, who has had a decent string of TKOs against tough guys. And, yeah, he fought Jorge Rivera and ended up getting the TKO, dirty knee or not, as well with Mayhem getting the TKO. So for all the jokes that Bisping gets of being pillow-fisted and being on his bicycle, the guy gets TKO finishes against legitimate guys at middleweight. and if Wanderlei's chin was really shot, and he was dropped by Bisping in the first round, he would have been finished. But Wanderlei has a heart of a fucking lion. His eyes are clear when he gets dropped. He got dropped by Franklin as well in their fight, and he was clear enough to get the fuck up right away and put the pressure on the guy to say, no, you're not going to fucking drop me, okay? Maybe if it was Belfort, maybe if it was Crow Cup, etc. But not against guys like Bisping, Franklin, or Kang Lee. Kang Lee was another guy that dropped him twice in that fight, and yet he showed resiliency, getting hit by 2 spinning back fists to get up right away and to put the pressure back on Kang. So, I feel that Franklin doesn't have the power to really flash KO Wanderlei. And he's not like Chuck. His chin hasn't just fallen off the map that he gets dropped by a punch that wouldn't have normally dropped him. Chuck is on his butt, doesn't know pretty much where he is to the point that he takes a few punches from Shogun or a couple from Franklin, and that's all she wrote. That's not been Wanderlei's chin if you look at it. He really has just gotten hit by vicious punches with his poor striking defense, and against guys that can't one-punch knock out an opponent, Wanderlei's not that susceptible. So I actually feel that this is being really overstated in the Franklin backers. So I feel that as well there are sort of stylistic advantages for Wanderlei versus Franklin. In that UFC 99 fight, Franklin won on the scorecards by taking advantage of that last minute, and if you look at Wanderlei's fights since he's made the diet change, the cardio change, the weight cut to 185, he has been the guy that's taken advantage of the last minute of rounds, and his cardio has been extremely good. I mean, Bisping is a cardio machine. He's looked at as one of the best guys with cardio at middleweight. He can go for days. And yet, it was Wanderlei that was pushing the pace in the last minute of every single round. He put the pressure on and hurt Bisping at the end of round 1. He put an arm and guillotine at the end of round 2. And he spammed a huge right hand against Bisping at the end of round 3 that dropped him. Had a flurry of punches to the point that Rogan thought it was a TKO rather than going to a decision by Josh Rosenthal, because Bisping didn't know where the fuck he was at the end of that 3rd round. So, Wanderlei has gas in the tank. If you look at his UFC 99 fight, before the nasal reconstructive surgery, before the scar tissue surgery, which he was cut in UFC 99 again before the scar tissue surgery, and he hasn't been cut since, he was gassed at the end of round 1. He was the old Wanderlei. He looked very swollen, cutting down. And that's not Wanderlei anymore. Wanderlei has a completely different look. He's got a completely different endurance in his recent fights. So, yeah, I think people are really misinterpreting Rich fighting the old Wanderlei at a 1.5 stage before he's really transformed and metamorphosized to the Wanderlei of 2.0, a $185 that has cardio for days, that puts pressure on guys in the final round, that will unquestionably win those rounds in a place like Brazil with the fans going crazy and the judges swayed. So I actually think that Wanderlei has a good chance for a decision if his power starts to diminish, and at that point I think it's basically going to be a battle of who's going to win a decision. I don't think Franklin will be able to finish him in the later rounds, and if Wanderlei won't be able to finish Franklin in the later rounds, although I think he still could of the two, then it's going to go to a decision, which I think really will go in favor of Wanderlei at that point. So